Recording. Oh, hi everyone. We're just re-recording this to make sure so that it's completely confidential and so that people can refer to it. We can pop it up on the website. We'll try and cover as many questions and things like that as possible, but just for confidentiality, so that we can cover everything really without breaking anyone's confidentiality. So hi, I'm Michelle. I'm the new chairperson over at Heartline Families, and I spent a long time in intensive care with my little boy. And if somebody told me, oh, you've got to have self-care, and I was like, yeah, whatever, I don't have time for that, and I'm just going to keep going, thanks. But actually it's really, really essential to parenting. And if I'm not looking after myself, I wasn't able to look after my little boy. So that's why I've got Jill here with us today. So I'm going to pass over to Jill, who's absolutely lovely and is going to talk to us about why self-care is essential to parenting, especially with our cardiac kiddies. Jill, over to you.
Hi there. Hi everyone. I am very aware that some of the things I'm going to say is going to get the response of, oh, I can't do that. That's impossible. You don't understand. And I do understand that. I understand that you will feel that way. But Michelle is absolutely right. We need to keep ourselves strong in order for us to do the things that we need to do for those around us, never mind the fact that it would be good for ourselves. So we'll just go through some of these slides, and Michelle will anticipate any questions or anything that you may need answering.
Jill, can I also ask you to kind of introduce yourself as well, because I know that you've
sorry.
But can you introduce yourself for the video?
Yeah, I kind of thought everybody knew who I was. Okay, that's fine. That's quite narcissistic, isn't it? I think everybody know who I was. So I'm Jill, and I'm the counselling lead for Little Miracles. So I run the counselling team here. I also work with children in care and adults with issues from childhood. So quite a range of clients and a range of work experience. And I also teach counselling too. So there's quite an extensive range of knowledge. So first of all, why self-care is essential to parenting. Caring for children with intense needs can take an emotional and physical toll on carers. Stating the obvious, I know, but sometimes validating that is important. We're not expected to just get on with everything. And my page isn't moving on. Why is that? Okay. So our mental health is on a spectrum. So someone with good mental health will think positively, will feel confident, and can act calmly. That would be a wonderful world, wouldn't it, if we all could do that? The reality is that we do all struggle with our mental health at times. So when we have poor mental health, we may feel sad or angry more often, more easily. We may feel that we can't control our feelings and or our behaviour. And we may think that the way we are thinking, feeling or acting is hard to cope with. We don't really like ourselves, let alone expect other people to like us. And that is a real sign that our mental health is poor.
And I think it's different for everyone. I know that for myself, I could feel myself getting really sarcastic and grumpy, and there'll be consultants and doctors kind of come in and talk to me about my child, and the way that my frustration would come out would be that I was grumpy and sarcastic and a little bit rude, if I'm honest. And it wasn't that I meant to be. I was actually really cringing inside, kind of knowing how rude I was being to these people that were trying to help me and trying to help my little boy. And as a bit of context, I spent 15 months in hospital for our first hospital stay, and then we kind of were in and out for most of the first 4 years. But I was awful. I was that mum that I think doctors were trying to avoid, and it was because I was trying to do everything, and my mental health was suffering as a result.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you're right, we do behave differently, and behaving in a way that we don't like, which is, is a real common thing. As we become more self-aware and we allow ourselves to feel how we feel, we can intercept that more quickly. We can sort of almost behave how we're behaving, but follow it up with, I know I'm being unreasonable, but this is how I feel. And that does actually get quite a good response from people, including doctors, because they understand that. Well, they should anyway. So caregiver burnout, the consequences of stress related to caring for a child with needs or any form of additional needs. Parents of children with additional needs may suffer from anxiety, depression, insomnia, fatigue, and often marital problems because the pressure just becomes too great. And who are we going to shout at first if we're stressed out? It's going to be our partner. I mean, you're going to feel these things to a degree anyway, just having to cope with the situations you find yourself in. But it's when they become uncontrollable, when you feel like you don't have any control over that at all, that's when the problems start to impact on everyone around you. An element of all of that in the situation you find yourself in is normal and okay. We have to accept that it's okay not to be okay. That's saying that everybody says.
I think that it kind of comes, I think the risk for the families with, you've got children with really poorly, is that you don't really realise that it's becoming a problem, is that you're okay, you're coping, you've got issues, that you're stressed, and you kind of feel that, but then you don't realise how much of a problem it is until you break and you can't cope, until you can't care anymore. And I think that's the real risk. It's if we're not healthy, if we're not looking after ourselves, then we can't look after our children. It took a long while for me. We're talking probably over 10 years for me to kind of get that I need to look after my mental health, because if I'm not well, I can't look after Oliver. And actually, Oliver deserves me to be at my healthiest, to be able to care for him.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, burnout of any kind. I mean, people that do my job suffer from burnout. And if you're not aware of it and you don't do the things to prevent that burnout, you're worried. The worry that you're going to let people down and not be able to care for them is making you do more and more and more. But it's that very doing more and more and more that's going to break you so that you can't do anything. Your body will eventually say, you can't cope anymore, you're really poorly now, and you've got no choice but to go to bed yourself. And then other people do have to take over, and you do have to accept help, but that's not the greatest way to do it. It'd be nice to have some control over that. So feeling like you can do it all, part of avoiding burnout is to challenge that idea, the idea that you are the only one that can help, you're the only one that knows and understands your child, and there is no limit to what you will do. Parents in general feel like that. We think we are the only ones that can give our child exactly what they need, and there's an element of truth there. Somebody else will do it differently. Your child might not like that quite so much, but to avoid burnout, we do have to challenge that idea. So carers can be driven to breaking point shouldering all the responsibility. And I think that's going to ring a bell with everybody listening to this.
Yeah, I think it's important that actually, if you're getting to that point, that you tell the people that are supporting you as well. I think that, so I'm going to use my son as an example because I've got consent to do so more than anything else, obviously. When I was seeing so many different professionals, and we had people every day that was like, you're so strong. And it's like, well, actually, I'm strong because I don't have another option. And yeah. I wish that I'd turned around and said, actually, this isn't fair. And it's not fair to be putting this much on me. Yeah. And I think that a lot of our families pick up a lot of extra responsibility that isn't theirs, and that should belong with other services, and things like kind of arranging care plans, things like kind of liaising between lots of different services. Well, there should be a process in place so that your child's information and that what other services need to know is going to them. It shouldn't be landing on you. And you should tell the professionals supporting you and kind of that are there for your child that they need to step up actually as well, because it's not about being strong, it's that there's no option a lot of the times, and there should be another option, and there is other options.
Yeah, and I think that's the problem, because services are so stretched. If you're really proactive and pushing yourself to the absolute limits, they will let you do that. They will let you carry on doing that. So we do have to try dig deep and be a little assertive. But as parents, we just feel that we should be doing everything for our child, but as we've said, it's not practical. So we do have to say, no, actually, I'm appearing strong because I have no alternative, but inside I'm not coping, and there's no shame in that.
And if you are in that situation as well, and you feel that you can't tell them, we'll actually reach out to ourselves. We will advocate, we will help you. It's the importance of finding someone to advocate for you if you can't tell someone is so powerful, because it's you guys that need this to say this the most, because actually it just mounts up otherwise, and kind of burnout creeps up on you without realizing, and that's when it all kind of goes to pot, and that's when things become scary.
Yeah, very, very scary. So this is another obvious one: isolation and exhaustion. So when you have a child whose needs are so great, feeling cut off from friends, neighbours and family is common. Feeling that no one else can possibly understand feeds back into that feeling that only you can do it all. So I'm sure you'll all recognise those feelings. So I like that picture, because you do feel like that, don't you, as a parent? Generally you do, like you're free falling and you're hoping somebody's going to catch you at some point.
I remember that everybody that I was pregnant with, they were kind of all comparing milestones, and it was all about the yummy mummy changing bag at the time, and kind of how beautiful it is. And my little boy still hadn't come home from hospital, and to hear everybody else, I was sat in a room surrounded by people often, but that was when I'd feel most isolated. And finding my tribe and people going through the same situation was really, really important for me. It made such a massive difference.
Absolutely. So, leads us on to this. So maintaining good relationship with friends and family is one of the most important factors in maintaining good mental health. So that applies to us all, doesn't it? Whatever our circumstances, whatever problems we're facing, if we can maintain good, positive relationships with family and friends, it does make us stronger. On the opposite note, we don't want negative relations. So we do need to recognize those and realize that what's healthy for us and what isn't. So new parent friends, that people in your own, in the same position or a similar position to you, can be both great for both of you and your children. But sometimes old friends are the only ones who you can confide in, have a laugh with, who know you. They're the people you can feel really comfortable with. So be careful not to cut those people off because of our own feelings. People sometimes don't know what to say the wrong things, behave in the wrong way, but it's not their intention. So as it's been lately with COVID restrictions, and sometimes simply if you've got a child that's poorly, you can't go out and meet people face to face. It's not always possible, but you can schedule regular calls, maybe when your children in bed, happy playing, doing something, can make all the difference.
Yes. Even a group WhatsApp kind of chat makes a massive difference. It's also, one of the things that when Oliver was poorly that I found quite helpful is that it was really soul destroying to have to give information out to lots of different people by putting it out to either just one person who would then give the information to everyone who needed to know, or that we're putting it out. Oliver was kind of in hospital kind of 2007 to 2011. He's quite healthy at the moment. But still just put it out on a WhatsApp group, so that then the information, I only have to go through it once, I only have to tell them once. I think in a lot of ways it stopped me having to relive the trauma every time of going through the bad news and just kind of hearing their reactions. Oliver was very poorly for a long time, and going through kind of having to give that bad news to lots of different people and hearing their emotions, and then I was finding myself having to be strong for them as well, and often the other way around. So I think kind of maintaining relationships is so important, and it's a really easy way to look after yourself without it being obvious, or you're going to go and have a bubble bath and have light some candles, kind of have a night off type thing. For me, that wasn't realistic.
No.
But actually talking to people and just kind of having a conversation in the evenings, that was.
Yeah. And also with people that we've known a long time, especially if we are feeling low, anxious, depressed, or as we looked at one of the previous slides, we can behave in a way that we're not comfortable with ourselves, but we can also make a lot of presumptions. Our brain basically isn't working well because we're so tired. You know, the sort of logical, rational thought process isn't always there. So we can make presumptions, and we can presume that people don't understand. We can presume that they don't want to help, and we can presume it would not be a good thing talking to them. It may be that they don't really understand and they don't know what you need from them, but communication with them, you know, may show us that they do want to help, and we need to almost educate them in how they can help. People are not always good at saying the right things. So we shouldn't presume that they're not going to be there for us, because they may well be if we give them the opportunity. So eat well and feed your brain. The mind and body are linked, and we do have to look after both. There's more and more research in this about the gut and the brain being linked and having effect, the gut having an effect on the brain. So having the right nutrients can affect both our physical and mental health. It's like putting rubbish diesel or super diesel in your car. You know, every now and then it's good to put the good stuff in. You will run better, you will have more energy, you will think more clearly if you're feeding your body and brain more effectively. That doesn't mean you can't have the odd binge, you can't do stuff to make you feel better short term, but we need to understand that long term that isn't helpful to us. We probably, you know, when we're looking after our children, we probably try and give them the right nutrients, most of us do, and we need to do the same for ourselves.
And a lot of the time that's easier said than done. It's when you're kind of going between hospitals, running between appointments and things like that. But just having a bag of kind of dried fruit in your bag, well, that's a better snack than a bag of Haribo. It's for years I carried around bags of Haribo and kind of Diet Coke in my bag, and I still do that. Who am I kidding? I still do that. I eat a lot of donuts. It takes a lot of donuts to kind of maintain this figure, but actually I do know that I think clearer if I'm eating healthier, but it's not always easy, and the planning that requires is often harder, and especially kind of making decent meals and things like that. It is easier to kind of put some kind of chicken nuggets and chips in the oven.
And that's one of the areas that we might be able to get help with. I mean, for some people it's not possible, but you know, those people who want to help you but just don't quite get it, if you were to say, could you help out with making this, doing this, whatever, when you're in a crisis time and you are doing hospital visits and stays, that is something practical that a lot of people could do for you. But in general everyday life, if we can just try and make slightly better choices, not beat ourselves up for not making them, but just try and make it the majority of the time that we make careful choices. So what should we eat? Omega oils, oily fish, avocados, that sort of thing. Omega oils are, you know, the right thing to have for your brain. No, there's a lot of research there. It's also good generally for your health. B vitamins, same. That's good for your nervous system. Spices such as turmeric and black pepper, they're good for inflammation. Everybody likes a bit of spice, most people anyway. Fermented foods, the natural yogurt, that's looking after your gut. And dark chocolate, Michelle, you can have that. Dark chocolate has got the good ingredients in that does affect your brain in a healthy way. It does release the happy hormone, but doesn't have all the sugar and fats that dissipates that. So it sort of maintains the nutrients. I mean, if your brain's healthy, you will feel generally better. If you're not getting the good nutrients, you will have low mood, anxious mind, you will get stressed more easily, you will have brain fog, you will have fatigue, irregular emotions, lack of motivation, and it will cause cravings. You know, it's the old sugar rush thing, isn't it? You feel better for a minute and terrible when you have that dip. Same's for alcohol. You know, you feel better when you have it, and then you get the booze blues afterwards. So always a price to pay.
What about if you physically can't? If things are too chaotic, if you're in and out of hospital, running between appointments, would say, because like having just a multivitamin, would that be helpful?
Massively, especially for the omega oils, because, you know, to be honest with you, oily fish, avocados, it all sounds great, doesn't it? But they, apart from anything, they're quite expensive, a lot of them. So
I'm not going to be carrying a tin of fish in my bag. I'm going to be
exactly. You have the odd sardine in your pocket. No, it's not good. One of my children actually couldn't tolerate milk even as a tiny baby, which is a bit of a nightmare, really. And as soon as she could start eating solids, she would eat a sardine as opposed to have a bottle of milk, which didn't have the same nurturing effect, I have to say. But it worked, and it gave her calcium and the omega oils which she needed.
I'm looking back and I'm there thinking, there was no way when Oliver was younger I would have been able to do any of this. I might have been able to swap out my normal chocolate for dark chocolate, but I'm there thinking, actually, I just wanted Mars bars and pink milkshakes.
But you could have taken a vitamin, couldn't you?
I could have taken a vitamin. That would have been something, would have fitted in my bag. I would have been able to keep some vitamins in my bag.
And nowadays, I mean, the vitamin market's improved greatly. You can get, you know, more if you took one or two things that have all that in. You know, a lot of the omega oils have vitamins as well. I mean, B vitamins you do have to be careful with. You can't double up on, then you know, you can have too much of that. But yeah, those vitamins in particular are good for your nervous system and for general health. I mean, bananas, they're good. They're quite easy to put in your bag.
No, I remember living out of the hospital canteen, and a hospital canteen, and if it closed at 8 o'clock. So if Oliver wasn't settled by 8, I would then be eating out the vending machine. They don't have turmeric in the vending machine, Jill.
Really? How terrible. Yeah, no, I know. So vitamins and minerals, you can take turmeric now. There's lots of things you can do now. I think it is more accessible than it used to be. And if you're taking all that stuff, you can eat your rubbish food, your junk food, can't you? Because you've got that food in you, you've got that nutrient in you. So it's easier to forgive yourself for taking that.
So I can still live off my Haribo and Diet Coke, providing I have a vitamin as well.
It would be better. It would be an improvement. But she doesn't always do it herself either, but I also know it works. So put yourself first. Easier said than done again. But the main thing is give yourself permission. So it's okay. Don't feel guilty about it, because you need to put yourself first in order to care on a higher level for everybody else. So giving yourself permission is really important. It's almost doing that makes you feel better straight away, because then you take any opportunity you can. So make time for yourself, which can be inside the home. Just having a bath if you can, maybe getting, if you've got a partner or older children or anybody that can just watch the situation for a little while you take 10-15 minutes to do that. Take yourself to another room and eat chocolate, you know, whatever it is. Give yourself permission to do it. It's okay.
And I think there'll be some people watching this that we're thinking, not a chance. There's no one else that can look after my child.
Yeah.
And I was in that situation. And so what we used to do is that we used to have cuddle time about 4 o'clock blues. Not sure what happened at 4, but I swear my son turned into a little monster.
Yeah.
And it would be as simple as I would turn on CBeebies and we would have a cuddle. And just the act of kind of having that 20 minutes to sit down and just, it was something weird. There were circus animals, but every day at 4 o'clock, we would watch these circus animals, and I would just kind of zone out, and I would be awake. I'd be looking after him. He would still be there. We'd be having cuddles. But in my head, I was having a bit of peaceful time. And it's okay to kind of do what you need to do. And if your little one is it is safe for them to be watching the TV and have something special on for 15 minutes so that you can kind of go and hide in the other room and eat your chocolate. Well, actually, just that in itself is enough to kind of increase your resilience.
It is. It is. I mean, I think parents in general need to do that. But when you've got a child with additional needs, it's more difficult to do it, but it's even more important that you do. I used to have to watch Cinderella every day at about 3-4 o'clock, because that's when I had my cuddles with my daughter, and she would just chill and watch that, and I would, as you say, just be in my own thoughts, really. Just peace and quiet.
It's I will admit to being so exhausted that sometimes, but we would watch CBeebies and I would have a little nap.
Yeah.
Because I was so exhausted.
Yeah.
Looking after Oliver was really, really hard. He had his complex heart conditions. He's got other disabilities. He's got complex feeding needs. He needed somebody awake 24 hours a day. And so me and my husband were sharing that. And then obviously my husband was at work. Actually, finding time to have a bubble bath was not an option. It couldn't happen with our life at that time. But 20 minutes for CBeebies, I could manage that.
And it's whatever you can manage, isn't it? It's saying it's okay and doing what you can. And
it's finding those those things. The other thing that I found really helpful was when my husband came home from work, is that he would get in the first 5 minutes. He would just I would give him the kids, and I'd just have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes. And often I would just sit in the bathroom and just sit down, just sit. And just having those 5 minutes, it gave me the strength and the energy to keep going for the rest of the night. And sometimes it is a matter of just thinking of getting through today, getting through the next hour. When I was really poorly and was in intensive care, getting through the next couple of minutes. And it was literally about just giving myself enough strength to get through that next chunk, and then get through the next hour, everything will be okay. And sometimes it is as simple as that, and it's so hard for us, and I completely get it. If you've got a kiddie with complex health needs, it's so hard, but it's also even more important. And it's finding those little things that make a difference to you. And if you think of yourself as like a little cup, and you're drinking out of your cup all day, it's just that to refill it and give yourself a next little boost of energy.
Definitely. You can't feed from an empty cup, as they say. So asking for help, as Michelle has said, you can, there are organisations that can help, as being one of them, obviously. But getting out and admitting that you're struggling sometimes, letting people in, letting people help. It may be just something small, but it makes a massive difference. Build a support network. Again, like Michelle has said, with our WhatsApp groups, that works for her. It works for a lot of people. Do something like that. Get out and about with your child if you can. If it's what's possible for you. I mean, obviously, I'm not aware of everybody's circumstances, but we can just look at our own circumstances and say, what little thing can we do? Is there somewhere we can go where there's other people in the same situation? Here at Little Miracles, we have that all the time. People just feel better the minute they walk in the door, because they know that people understand, there's no judgment, they can just take a break, and that works. And
when Oliver was born, I didn't have that. But staring at those 4 walls, actually that's where it becomes dangerous. And we came home on full life support, and I literally would load all the life support on, and we only got about 30 to 45 minutes out of each oxygen cylinder. But you know what? That was enough time for me to take a little walk around the block, and just knowing I was getting out and seeing the other end and seeing a tree. It sounds stupid, but actually it made a big difference. And just getting out of the house, so that, because when I was at home, if I was thinking about things and everything would just build up. It's the act of getting out of the house was a nightmare. I remember it would take me longer to get ready to leave the house than I was able to be out of the house. But whilst I was getting everything together, getting it all occupied, it was hard work. But actually, that was, my brain was thinking about, okay, I need to make sure I've got this cylinder. I need to make sure we've got enough battery. My brain was thinking about that. It wasn't thinking about the what ifs. And at the time I was thinking, what the hell are you doing? This is just stupid. but my brain was occupied and thinking about other things, and that's really helpful. You don't think it at the time, but it is really helpful. And for me, distractions, we were always kind of, Oliver was diagnosed with a life shortening condition. And if I was to kind of sit at home and kind of see the four walls, well, he was a baby, he couldn't interact with me. He would often be asleep or unconscious. And I was just kind of there thinking, well, how are we going to get through the day? Kind of what's going to happen type thing. If my brain was thinking about, okay, I've got to go find a shoe, and I am that mum that has been out with 2 odd shoes before. And I've done that. I've got halfway down the road and thought, the battery alarm's going. I'm gonna go back before we end up in trouble. I'm also that mum who ran out of an oxygen cylinder halfway to Cambridge and ended up having to call an ambulance to swap the oxygen cylinders. I am that mum. You won't get it right, guys. It won't always be right, but sometimes if you can just kind of getting out and about, it won't feel like it's making things better straight away, but it will occupy your mind. It will stop you thinking about the what ifs, and it will help. It will help longer term.
The thing is that when you have children with these difficulties, you are firefighting all the time, and your brain is in fight or flight mode. So when you are in that mode, your rational, calm thinking brain does shut down. That's the way our brain works. And by engaging it in something that just makes it think, you almost turn on that rational part of your brain again. So there is science behind it, but it is those distractions. It is that thinking about something else that does put your brain in gear. And a lot of things you're saying, Michelle, which is that horrible word that you really cringe at all the time, mindfulness. It is that, because it is looking at a tree and going, oh, that's a nice tree. It is thinking, I've got through this, what have I got to do to get through this minute, this half an hour, this hour, and not looking much further ahead than that. That is mindfulness, and that does help you just gain control of the day in segments rather than trying to see the big picture and that is when the what ifs come in, because you go on autopilot, your logical thoughts are out the window, and the what ifs and the invasive thoughts, they all take over. So that's what this sort of thing helps.
I'd love to say I was just going to go and look at nice trees. I think, Jill, you've got kind of more of an idealised approach than what I actually did. I had a child, taking him for a walk and picking a leaf and showing him, oh, isn't this a pretty leaf? And kind of naming what we were seeing and kind of pointing things out to him. Well, that was good for his development as well. And so kind of I could be pointing out trees to him, pointing out cars, naming colours, singing him songs. There was a bench near where I used to live, and I think I spent quite a lot of time sat on that bench singing songs. But I could watch people there was people going past. There wasn't any of the pressure of having to talk to those people. I didn't want to talk to people at the time. But I could see people, and I think that kind of seeing people kind of helped as well, and not having any of the pressures of, oh, I've got to talk to this person and pretend everything's okay. It's okay to not be okay.
All that you're suggesting there, it is staying in the present moment, because it is, whether you're doing it for your own sake or your child's, it has that's where it almost merges into one, isn't it? Because he's looking at the leaf, you're looking at the leaf. If he's looking at something, you're looking at it, and it's taking the attention away from just that autopilot of one worry after another worry after another worry.
I think it was easier for me to justify it to myself as actually I'm teaching him as well. I'm helping his development. I'm helping him learn his colours. And so I'd be looking out for cars of different colours that we could point out. And I was doing it. I was telling myself I'm doing this to help Oliver. But actually the knock-on effect is that it was helping me as well, and just kind of try to find cars of different colours to be able to point them out to him, different shaped leaves and different shapes and things like that. Well, it was good for both of us.
It is. It's good for anybody with anxiety. That's what if I do sort of people call it walking therapy, but in COVID times, I just did therapy while I was going for a walk with people. And that's exactly what I would get them to do. Look at things, we find a certain type of flower, find this, find that, because their brain then became engaged in an activity which stopped all the what ifs. So it is a good thing to do. Whatever the reason you do it, it works. So exercise, okay, everyone's gonna, I can imagine the thought process. But like you're saying, it is just a walk. You know, it can be just a walk around the block, walk with the child in the buggy. It can be doing something. We are lucky now, actually. There's so much, because of COVID, one of the good points of COVID is there's so much more available to us online, on the TV, to help our own well-being. So you can do meditations, relaxations, exercise, you can do in the home much more easily. But even just playing with the child, like you've just explained perfectly, Michelle, that is exercise, that is engaging your brain in something, that is going to give your anxiety a break. So it's whatever fits in with you.
Yeah, I'm never going to be someone who's going to take going to the gym, I'm afraid, Jill. There's no. Oliver's 14. Even now, I wouldn't have time to go to the gym. No. But I can manage going to the park. It doesn't matter what it is, does it? It's not going to the gym, running marathons, doing all that. I mean, for some people it is. Some people do exactly that. You know, if they've got time to go to themselves, they will go and run 5K. And there's a big thing about that, isn't there now? We've got to learn to run 5K. And it just, the rebel in me thinks, well, I really don't want to. But, it's whatever fits in, whatever suits you, your routine, or what is available to you. And there'll be some parents that are watching this thinking, I'm stuck on the wards, I can't go out and get any exercise, there isn't an option. I used to just kind of, being on the ward and living on a hospital ward is so mentally draining. It's really hard. The lights are so bright, and you're not too sure if it's day or night outside some of the times. And so it's really important just to kind of take a break, even if it is just to kind of call your mum and kind of talk to someone on the phone, but whilst you're kind of off the ward, walking around the hospital. It can be as simple as kind of walking from the ward to the canteen, walking to the vending machine to get your bits of chocolate that Jill's not going to approve of. But if it gets you off the ward, if it gets you that kind of 2 minutes, it counts as exercise, guys. Jill might be thinking that's not exercise. If you are moving, you're doing something. I'm excited. I'm the least fit person in the world, but going even now, when Oliver still spends quite a bit of time in hospital, I always call my husband in the evenings, so we spend a lot of time in hospital away from the family home and not in a local hospital. But I will call Daddy together, but also I will call him after Oliver's gone to sleep, and I might just walk from the ward to the vending machine. But from a practical point of view, that also means that Oliver isn't subconsciously hearing me kind of updating my husband about his health. And I think that's important as well. It's even as a young age, our kiddies, they pick up on things, and there's going to be things things about their health, things about your worries, and they're better said, and they're better said when your child can't hear you. So the nurses are there to help, the play team are there to help. Even if it is just to kind of go across the corridor and have a shower, they're there to help you, take them up on it. And if your exercise is walking to the vending machine to get some chocolate, try and make it dark chocolate to keep Jill happier.
I feel a bit of a fraud now because I don't eat dark chocolate myself. But it is knowing that it is good for you. But I do get it. I mean, even walking down the steps to outside, depending which hospital you're in, outside for 2 minutes and just breathing a bit of air and coming in, or as you say, walking around. And you are right, we do take things in subconsciously. And I have a lot of situations when I'm working with families where the parents talk in front of the child when the child's awake, let alone asleep, and it isn't always a good thing. You know, we do have to watch that. So taking yourself away, doing whatever you can, it's being active rather than sitting all the time. It's doing anything. But fresh air would be good if you can just go outside for 5 minutes. But if you can't, you can't. You can only do what you can do. So be creative. Okay. You can't take all your arts and crafts into hospital. I understand that. But I think we were talking earlier, Michelle, and you said about crocheting, didn't you? That helped.
Yeah, when Oliver was in intensive care, and he was in intensive care for a long time, I would crochet blankets, because if I was trying to, I like to read as well. My self-care is generally I read. But if I'm reading, my brain sometimes kind of wanders off on its own, and I realise I've read the whole chapter and I've not read any of it. But I found that crocheting blankets when things were really, really difficult, really helpful, because I'd have to count stitches, and it's something that I can kind of do subconsciously, but at the same time, my brain is engaged. Everybody got blankets. So we did one particularly long stint in intensive care where things were really, really tricky, and everybody got blankets. And I'm pretty sure that people would think that I was crazy, sat in intensive care, crocheting this blanket. And some of the other parents would look at me and say, what the hell is she doing? But you know what? It stopped me thinking about about the negative things. And we've had the not going to make it through the night chat 14 times with Oliver. And so if I was crocheting, I was concentrating on that. But if I wasn't crocheting, well, actually in my head, I'm kind of planning funerals and things like that. And that's really, really not healthy. It's if you can find that thing that you can take in a bag, that you can you don't have to be making a blanket at the end of it. If you're distracted, well, actually that's something that's really, really important, and so much better than just scrolling through social media. If you're scrolling through social media, you're kind of comparing yourself to the outside world, and oh, they've been to the park, wish I could go to the park. It's seeing other people I really struggled with seeing other people. And something as simple as kind of crocheting for me made a massive difference, and it did distract me, and it did stop me thinking the negative thoughts as well. And I think that helped me then stay strong and a bit more resilient. I hate the word resilient. I hate the word mindfulness, wellness, resilience. I've heard them all and I hate them. But I do understand that actually they're needed, and it just kind of distracting my brain for that bit of time. Well, actually it's distracted. I'm not thinking the kind of worst for that time as well. It kind of reduced the panic levels.
Yeah, and everything, you hate all those labels, but actually everything that you do that's positive for yourself comes under one of those labels.
Yeah, I don't want to hear those labels though, because you tell me wellness and mindfulness, it's like, no, Jill, I don't have time for that. Just stop. Just no. But
so crocheting is a really good thing, and I actually, one of my families that I work with here in Little Miracles, when I see the mum, I can always tell her mental state by what she brings in, because she's always crocheting. And if she's doing something really complex, I know that her mental state is quite good, because she has got the capacity to do that. When she's having a really anxious time, she just brings in this little, I don't even know what it is. I wouldn't insult her by asking her what it is, because you really can't tell. I think it's like a placemat or something. It's like a little circle or a little square. And it's because her brain is only capable of concentrating to that level, but because she's so stressed out. But as she talks and as she crochets and as her brain becomes engaged and that horrible autopilot gets switched off, she then picks something else out of a bag and starts doing something more difficult. And what I do say to people is, when they are, if they get in a situation where they can feel absolute panic, the first thing to do, everybody says, breathe, nice deep breaths. That irritates me, to be fair. It does work if you can breathe and focus on your breath and count your breaths and make the breath the focus. That does work. But most people can't when they're anxious. They just can't get their head around that. But they can possibly get their head around counting backwards from 10, counting backwards from 10 in twos, slowly making it more more complicated, because that does do all the things that you're describing, Michelle. It does switch on the prefrontal cortex, thinking part of your brain, and stops the autopilot of what ifs, shoulda, coulda, woulda, all of those things. So it helps to prevent intrusive negative thoughts. So it's anything that makes your brain work. So you just have to find the thing that suits you. I mean, if you are at home and you've got the space, arts, crafts, puzzles, even games on your phone, really, as long as they're ones that involve using your brain and not just shooting somebody or whatever they are. But as long as it's something that uses your brain, brain training stuff, that is going to work to relax you. And you're right, reading a book, watching TV on its own when you're feeling anxious doesn't work, because you can go into autopilot. So you need to engage your brain in something that you can do, and then you can watch TV, and then it does work. But
sorry, Jill.
Yeah, you carry on.
And I always hate it when people ask me how I'm doing, because I'll just say I'm fine. But actually, if Jill wants me to say something a bit more kind of complex and actually get a real answer out of me, she gives me a colouring book or hammer beads. It's easier for me to kind of talk if I'm kind of if I'm concentrating on colouring, or if I'm doing some hammer beads. I bloody hate hammer beads, but you know what? They're really good at kind of thinking that I'm thinking about my hammer beads, but I'm talking at the same time. And it's because my brain is distracted and things just kind of come out. It's easier to be honest in those times. I think that for a lot of us, that the natural default, how are you? I'm fine. You could always kind of tell my mental state kind of by the amount of makeup I was wearing. My thoughts were, if I had perfect makeup, and the nurses wouldn't ask me how I was doing, and they didn't. They don't ask the parent that's got the perfect day of makeup how you're doing. And so I'm the least feminine person in the world. I don't think I've worn makeup for years. But if Oliver's in hospital, I will have perfect hair and makeup. I will be the first person up on the ward, because they don't ask questions. And that meant I could avoid the difficult questions. And that was an absolutely awful coping strategy, because it meant that people just presumed I was okay. And it's just getting up in the chat that other people have done that as well. And if people aren't asking, I didn't have to tell them I wasn't okay. I would, and it's really important if you're not okay to tell people. But at the same time, if you haven't got the mental capacity to tell people, Jill's going to tell me off now, but a good kind of trick is to put on a good face of makeup, a good kind of brush your hair. People won't ask you. They'll just presume that all is okay.
Yeah, so what we can learn from that is when we're supporting each other, to take that on board too. Because if you see, if you're having a relatively okay time with your child, and one of your friends or someone you're supporting, and they come and see you with a nice full face of makeup, and now you can say, how are you? Even though they've got a full face of makeup on. But it is true, it's a mask, it's classical masking, isn't it? We're hiding behind it, and that is true. And people actually, it's not really good that the nurses don't ask if they see that, because they should be aware that is what you're doing. Or they might just be taking the cues that you don't want to be asked. But there are ways of asking, there are ways of talking to people. And also when you're talking to somebody and maybe you're in the position of being the supportive one at that time, it's a good idea for you to be doing the colouring as well. So that you're not, so yes, they can be colouring and they can be doing their hammer beads or whatever they're doing, crocheting. But if I'm doing it as well, they don't feel under, sort of scrutiny. And that works too. So, helping other people, help yourself is, that's what works, isn't it?
And I think it's really important that we do help each other as well. Some of the people that I met on the ward, there was nobody else who did know what I was going through at the time. It was other families. I don't know how many operations Oliver's had now. If I was to guess, about 140-ish at a guess. We've had a hell of a lot. and kind of he's got a lot of other issues as well, but nobody else could get that. It was the other parents on the ward that would know, and the other parents that would meet at support groups. It was those people that made a massive difference, because we would kind of talk, and you'd kind of, sometimes it was really quite dark. It was quite dark, but they would get it. And so kind of finding those people that do get it. If you can't, sometimes it's easier to talk to a stranger. It's
definitely
relationship wise, you've got to keep talking to family and friends. You've got to really kind of work on keeping those relationships. But sometimes when the dark thoughts creep in, it's easier to admit those to someone that you don't know, because the risk is lower.
Or as you say, somebody in your tribe, somebody that gets it. It's but distracting yourself or engaging your brain in some kind of activity is going to help on any level, and will help us talk and open up. And you do need to talk and open up, however hard that is. So be kind to yourself. Another cliche, another thing that probably irritates some people, but it is true. How would you treat somebody else in your position? If you could observe yourself, how would you treat yourself? How would you treat somebody else? How would you talk to somebody else going through what you're going through? Well, just do the same for yourself. Talk to yourself in the same way, show yourself the same amount of kindness that you would show someone else. So tell yourself it's okay, you're doing a good job. It's okay to mess up. It's okay to have an untidy house. It's okay to let the rules slide and eat tons of chocolate and donuts. And it's okay to talk to yourself with kindness that you show others. That's a really important message, because we are good at looking after other people sometimes, aren't we? But not so great at looking after ourselves. Make a to-do list. Again, another cliche, but a list that you challenge. So I would often say to people I work with, make a list of everything you think you should be doing, or you feel like you need to do. Just get it out of your head onto a piece of paper. Then challenge that list. Is this something that somebody else could do? Is this something that's my responsibility? And anything that doesn't answer those questions can be crossed off or put to the bottom. So prioritize. And the list is a rolling list. It goes on every day. So what you don't do that day carries over to the next day, and so on. It's kind of more of a not to do list, because you're looking at what you don't need to do rather than what you do need to do. So anything that's left on there, will get done at some point. And it's just a way of controlling those thoughts about I need to do this, I need to do that. Limits it a little bit.
And if you achieve it, if you've done something as well, write it on the list so you can tick it off.
Yeah, definitely.
Ticking it off. It's like a little. I love my to-do lists. I plan to the nth degree, and I find that really calms me. But actually, if I achieve something unexpected, I'm writing it on my list, even if I've already done it.
Yeah.
Just so I can tick it off, because that kind of ticking it off, it's a really positive thing in my brain. Whoop, did that.
Yeah, it's very satisfying when you've got a list of ticks, isn't it? Or a list of lines through it. I like that. So I think that's my thing. I like to scribble them off, eradicate them. So another one that's going to make people go, oh no, if only. But yes, sleep the best you can. So it is just the best you can. As Michelle said, with her and her husband, they did share the roles, but when possible. So if you have a partner, make sure that you share the load. Sleep when your children sleep, whenever that is. Doesn't matter when it is. So when they sleep, you sleep. If you can have some kind of childcare, use it. Yes, they're not going to be as brilliant and amazing as you, but they will probably be okay. Obviously, careful who you choose. But whatever works. Whatever you can do to enable that you get some sleep. It doesn't have to be, because it's unlikely to be, a block of sleep, but snatching moments of sleep will always help.
I'm going to come in on this one, because I was one who couldn't sleep, and I couldn't. There just wasn't the opportunity.
No.
Oliver would need somebody up all night. Me and Paul were having to sleep in shifts. He was having to work.
Yeah.
it wasn't possible. But actually, in hindsight, could I have asked my mum to kind of sit and play with him, and I was kind of upstairs kind of having a nap, and she would be able to shout me if anything was going wrong?
Yeah.
Possibly. It could have kind of it on a child mind. I'm there thinking, not a child, would I give my child who was poorly to someone else?
Yeah.
But I could have had somebody kind of, I could have had someone to look after him whilst I had a nap upstairs. And there are, if you're there and you're there thinking that you really, really can't, there are other options as well. So the sleep when your child sleeps, if that's possible, then definitely do it. And that will depend on your child's needs. I know that a lot of us do have to be awake when our kiddies are asleep. But if your child's asleep and you can sleep, don't do the washing up, leave the washing up. If you have to put the washing up in a bucket and hide it in a cupboard because you know you've got a professional coming round, well, not ideal, but you know what? It's better that you get some sleep than worry about the washing up. And if you're there and you really, really can't, then speak to the people that are supporting you. We got referred to a hospice, and I was horrified. The word hospice to me was absolutely awful, but just having, and I went with him. And just having someone look after him, and I was there to be shouted if needed. But it just meant I got a bit of sleep, and anything that you can grab makes a massive difference. If you are sleep deprived, there's more chance that you're going to miss something. I remember being completely knackered to the point that I slept through his SATS monitor alarming, and the situation could have been dire. Sleep is so important. Without it, you think you're doing okay, but you're not. They will get to a point that you're dozing out, you're missing things. There will be meds errors. There will be a time when you sleep through the alarm. You need to look after sleep yourself, and sleep is so, so important. There will be people that kind of, I always used to think, oh, someone's coming over, I'm going to have to tidy the house. And so I'd sacrifice sleep to tidy the house. Whereas what I should have been asking them to do is, hey, you want to come round, Fab, can you do the washing up for me? And just asking people to help. And kind of asking people, can you just look after him for 5 minutes so I can kind of nip to the loo in peace? I was a mum that had to take my child to the toilet with me. Actually, just having someone to kind of pop in so I could go to have a wee in peace, that would have been bliss. But if there's somebody that you trust to just not be able to look after your child, they don't have to look after your child. But if you can trust them to kind of keep an eye on them whilst you have a nap upstairs or in the other room, just kind of have a doze in a chair, it makes a massive difference. And if there isn't any other options, you can speak to social services. There is respite available, and you might be thinking that that's not achievable, but it is. Sleep is so, so important. And if it gets really dire, actually CBeebies is amazing. So you can watch CBeebies, have a cuddle, and just have a little bit of a rest. That 20 minutes, well, that's enough to kind of give you a bit of a refresh. But long term, you need to look after your sleep. The consequences become dire if you don't, and not just for you, but for your child. You don't have to sleep for you.
And that's the thing, isn't it? That's what we need to remind ourselves. You know, if we're not happy to do all this for ourselves, we need to realize that we're doing it for our families, for our children, because you will get broken if you don't have enough sleep. And cat naps and snatching it here and there, it does work. It does help. We're trying to stop you being broken, really. Now, Michelle touched on this earlier. I really, really feel strongly about this. It's just not helpful. Take a break from social media. 24/7 engagement with instant messaging, social media. There's comparisons, oh, look at that family, perfect family out there in the fresh air doing or on the beach or whatever, and you're stuck at home or in hospital. It just makes you feel terrible. It just makes you feel worse. And it's not that we don't want other people to have a good life, it's just that it reminds us of how hopeless we feel things are for us at that time. We also know that it's very fake, you know. Not everybody is actually doing what they say they're doing on social media, or, you know, that's just a snippet of the day. So some people, you stay on your devices out of habit. So, you know, we've all learned that we need to limit our children's time on devices for several reasons. So try and do the same for yourself, and choose what social media you're on. So as Michelle has said, with the WhatsApp groups and things like that, with your support groups, that can be your lifeline. But things like looking at your Facebook feed, it can make you feel rubbish because you think everybody else is having a great time, or it can make you feel rubbish because there's loads of depressing stuff on it. Whatever it is, it's not helpful. So choose the things that make you feel good. Block or ignore accounts which make you feel low, angry, depressed. Limiting uses of devices can also help you have a better sleep when that sleep time is available. I mean, I have known people who are struggling, you know, with tiredness. They get a chance to rest and they spend that rest looking at social media. It isn't a restful time, you know. The light from your phone, the things you might see that could trigger all sorts of things are just not helpful. So we're looking at maintaining our energy levels as best we can in very difficult situations. That's what we're trying to achieve. And social media, most of the time, is not the greatest way.
And there will be people that you're thinking, that actually this account is quite depressing. I don't want to see it, and that would be better for your mental health if you was to block them. And you'll be there thinking, no, I can't block this person. You can't block your mum. And if your mum's putting all these things on Facebook about how poorly their grandchild is, and you're there thinking, that's thanks for that, mum. That's my kiddie that you're talking about. You can't block your mum. You can't do that. But actually, you can mute them. And you
can hide them.
You can hide them. You've got Facebook has and kind of in WhatsApp. I love the mute button on WhatsApp. It's sorry, mum, if you're watching this, but sometimes you used to put things on social media about how hard things were, how Oliver was struggling. That was awful to have to see. And it's kind of, so I've poured my heart out here. I've told you this, what's going on. I know you're just going to share it with social media. Thanks for that. And for her mental health, that's what she needed to do. Fair enough. But I needed to protect myself as well. And you can't block your mum. Trust me, that doesn't go down well. But at the same time, you can put things on mute. You can hide posts. Just put the phone down. Just kind of go for a walk. Crochet that blanket. And protect yourself as much as you can.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of negativity out there which we really don't need to see.
Don't get taken on other people's mental health issues.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there are times where we can help other people, but that's just not one of them, and that's not the right way to do it. So your favorite word, Michelle? Mindfulness. But as we've gone over this, it is just living in the moment. So look for the good in your life, because there will be some good things. There's pleasure in your child as well as sadness and heartache and pain. There is pleasure there. Focus on what is happening, not what has or will be or might happen. Notice things on your walk, sounds, sights, textures. If sharing that with your child makes you feel better about it, do that. And I think this is quite significant. Each day is a gift, and that's why it's called the present. So there you go, nice little one there. But each day is a gift, and we should treasure each day, and whatever good there is in that day, however small, try and find that good. So to summarize, look after your own mental health. Looking after your own mental health and well-being helps us in every aspect of our lives. It helps to cope better. There's a tendency to think it's being selfish to prioritize our self-care, but one of the main reasons prioritizing self-care is important is to make sure that we are fit and well as we can be to care for those around us, especially those little kiddies that are poorly. So look for the good in your life. Use mindfulness to enjoy the present moment, not looking too far ahead. And there will be times you have to. There will be times there's no avoiding it, but not every day. Enjoy that moment if you can.
Yeah, it's really big advocate for the lists. Things that I have lists for lots of different things. So things that I need to get done today, things that I can tick off, things for that I need to do and need to think about in the future, but I'm just not ready to think about just yet. I hate the word mindfulness. I hear so much about being mindful and I just want to slap the person, I'm afraid. Tell me, Jill, sometimes you talk about mindfulness and I'm thinking, just stop, just shut up already.
Michelle, you don't think it, you say it.
So I've lost any filters. I used to be polite. I like to think I know you now well enough that I can say just not today, Jill. But actually, there's lots of little things that I do which they are mindful, and I hate to admit it, but they kind of are. And things like having a list of things that I just don't want to think about yet. If I've got it, I can wake up in the middle of the night and just kind of need to get it out of my head. So I have a pen and paper next to me, just kind of write it down so that I don't have to think about it now and go back to sleep. Don't write it on your phone. By the time you've unlocked your phone, you've got bright glaring light. You're more awake.
Bits of paper.
Yeah, bits of paper, get it out of your head, put it on paper. And everything's on your phone now, and that's really handy. But actually, by the time that you've unlocked your phone, you've got a bright glaring light, you're awake, you're concentrating on this, you're going to be distracted on social media. I always kind of pen and paper, tick things off. The act of ticking them off.
There's some really nice. I mean, if you're like a stationery addict, like somebody I know, there's some really nice journals out there which can, and yes, it is annoying because it's become the thing to do, the trendy thing to do, but actually in therapy it's always been recommended that you have a journal, because it is something quite cathartic about having things out of your head and on paper. And there's journals now that are really good at there's areas to do lists, there's areas to put the positive things of the day, there's areas to offload the just general thoughts and negativity and all of that. They are quite good. So that's probably, and doing that can be quite, it's like doing your crocheting, really. It can be quite good.
I've got a stationery fetish, I'm going to call it. I do spend a lot of time planning out what my week's going to look like. Well, if Oliver's got a hospital appointment here, who's going to have my other kids? Am I kind of dragging them to the hospital with me, and kind of what am I going to pack in the bag to kind of to occupy them type thing? By having everything kind of written down, it really helps. I found bullet journaling really great and really helpful and kind of look into the future. Some people find it really helpful to kind of be reflective and kind of write down what's happened, their thoughts and feelings. I am not that person. The closest I will get to that is I brought some stickers for my diary. Some are pink Care Bears that hold up a sign that say, I had a good day. And some of the sad Care Bear, the little blue sad one, saying, today was not a good day. That is as closest to reflective thinking you're going to get from me, Jill.
But that is good, isn't it? That is good that you do that, because you're acknowledging it. You are getting it out of your head that it was a sad day. You are acknowledging that there were good aspects of another day. So
acknowledgement through Care Bears, but it's the kind of getting things out of my head and kind of getting them on paper. They are really helpful. It's bullet journaling in particular. I found mine was never the most beautiful, but you know what? Trying to make it beautiful, well, that also occupied my brain. Pinterest was a better kind of hit to fall down than Facebook. So there's always bits there as well. But,
okay. Well, I am going to have to sign off in a minute. So for those of you that are going to listen to this, I hope some of it helps. I'm sorry if some of it seem unattainable for you, but maybe there are little bits in there that are helpful. I always feel a little bit like an imposter when I'm talking to people who I know are really having a hard time. And at the moment, I'm not having the same kind of hard time, but it is factual that some of these things will help. And sometimes when we're in those situations, the old-fashioned saying of not seeing the wood for the trees is true. So sometimes having it pointed out, however irritating that is, can be really helpful. So I hope there's some little bits in there that may help you.
Definitely. Thank you, Jill, for your time today.
Okay. No problem.
And if anybody watching this is having a difficult time, please just reach out. So Jill is from Little Miracles. That's a charity that supports families with any child that's got any additional needs. And obviously we're doing this today for Heartline Families, so any child that's got a cardiac condition. One of the things that we're doing and we're going to be launching is pay what you can afford counselling. So even if that's nothing, that's absolutely nothing. So if you are a mum and you're there, or dad, or kind of any kind of carer, and you're there thinking, not a chance, not I can't do this, but actually things like counselling and mental health support, please just reach out and we will help you. Okay, so please just get in contact. So thank you.
Thank you for the nice message.
Thank you everyone who's watching this today.
Okay. Thank you. And yeah, do get in touch if you want counselling. We can arrange that. That's something we can do.
Yeah.